Hi, and welcome everyone. We're really pleased that you are able to join us today. And there's, quite a lot of us online, so that's really great. And we're really hoping as sort of colleagues through different small grants organizations that these types of topics are very helpful and useful in your conservation journeys. And we do plan to probably host more later in the year. So certainly keep an eye out on all of our platforms for those coming up. And before we get started, just some general webinar logistics. So first, you will have hopefully seen we are recording this session, and that recording will go out in an email to everyone after today. Also, with so many of us, if you could please keep your audio muted and your cameras off, that would be appreciated. And we have set aside quite a bit of time for questions. And so we received quite a few when you signed up, which we might go over those, but please definitely enter questions into the chat. And we will be going through those either verbally or someone will be answering in the chat too, especially for those that are quite common and come up frequently. We're also going to do our best to answer as many as we can in the time that we have allotted. So with that, we will prioritize some of those commonly answered or requested questions, what you put in the chat, and therefore we also won't be answering any questions that are specific to a specific grant or a specific donor. Within that follow-up email, we will provide some links to our websites and some of our guidelines that should be able to answer any questions that are quite specific that you might have. And so with that, I also just want to say that we have representatives from quite a few small grants funders with us. So from the Conservation Leadership Program, Conservation Connect, the Mohammed bin Zayed Conservation Fund, the People's Trust for Endangered Species, Rufford Foundation, and the Whitley Fund for Nature. And all of them are here to answer some of your questions. But before we get to that, I just want to give a brief introduction of our two speakers, and then they'll get us started. So Anne Alexander is the director of both the Prince Bernhard Nature Fund and Conservation Connect. She's a biologist who used to run field projects, but for the last 10 years has been on the other side of the table as a fund manager. And Carla Hernandez is the senior program officer for the Conservation Leadership Program and based at BirdLife International. So she oversees the CLP Team Awards and leads multiple aspects related to CLP's grants management. But with that, Anne, go ahead and get us started, please.
Thank you so much, April. I will first share my screen. I hope everybody can see it.
Yeah.
So hi, everyone. Thank you, April, for the introduction, and welcome to the first of our sessions of this webinar series, What to Expect After Submission. My talk specifically will be about what to do after you've received a grant. My name is Anne Alexander. Indeed, I'm co-founder and director of Conservation Connect and also of Prince Bernhard Nature Fund, which is a small endowment fund from the Netherlands. We give small grants up to 30,000 euros to red-listed species programs in the Global South. Since recently, we started to give our grants through the platform Conservation Connect, which is actually a spin-off from PBNF. It's a fairly young organization. We only exist since 4 years. And we're currently a consortium of 20 funds that will also is giving grants up to 20,000 euros to projects worldwide, and we do some capacity building and courses on the side. Now, because the time is limited today, I wanted to limit my talk to give you 5 advices about what to do after you receive a grant. First of all, to monitor and make sure you monitor the right things, ideally following a theory of change. Second, to engage with your donors and keep them in a loop. Third, tell your story and share your results. Fourth, to connect with other conservationists and share learnings. And fifth, to build on your previous work or your current work when you look for follow-on funding. So before you apply for funding, I would recommend everyone to work on a theory of change. So make sure you have a logical approach, and this will allow you to identify indicators to monitor if your interventions are successful or not. If you don't know how to make a theory of change, there are a lot of resources freely available online. Also on YouTube, there are some nice tutorials. I can also advise you to keep a little eye on our Conservation Connect LinkedIn, as we sometimes give away some free course spots on adaptive management and conservation standards courses that also give you access or will teach you to make a theory of change. Because this theory of change kind of forms the basis of your logic that you build your applications on. So this will not only guide you to monitor if your interventions are successful, but also monitoring the right things can give you that proof of concept that you need to for your follow-up funding, whether with current donors or another new donor. So monitoring is really key. I would advise you to put monitoring cost, if the donor allows, in your budget. With Conservation Connect, we don't see it a lot, but we do allow for it. I would say it is integral part of your project. So put it in there. And as a final part of this, I put celebrate your wins. I will explain what I mean by this. You will see on the right-hand side a little part of a theory of change of our adaptive management course that we do with Alcedo Conservation. In the triangle, the yellow one, you see our intervention, and then to the right of there, you see in the blue blocks the outcomes. And we monitor whether these outcomes are made by a round green circle, which means they're on track. Green or red means minor or major issues with this outcome. And I know I say monitoring is important because it allows you to analyze the right things and report on them, but it also allows you to keep track of your little wins. So when one of those trackers become from red to yellow to green, they turn green, then celebrate this. Because, you know, give yourself a compliment, your teammate a compliment, share it with your donor if it's a major milestone, or treat yourself to that extra coffee. Because you often, when I read the proposals, I see everybody works on such important issues, but also big issues and complicated matters. So if we don't celebrate the little wins in between, it's easy to get discouraged on the long run. Now, also engage your donor. I know that most of you know that when you have received a grant, it's a logical step to check with on the website or with the donor by email what are the reporting requirements. But next to that, it's really nice to engage a donor also in the meantime, like in the grant period. Just by taking a photo or sending a little video, and this is one of my advices, because when you engage with a donor in through either reports or updates, there are some ways to be smart about the time input that you put in. And quick videos, for example, are one of these things that I really love, because it gives us a little bit of a feeling of this project. You must understand that we are the donors here, they often sit in offices. I sit in an office in rainy Amsterdam. It's cloudy, it's foggy. There's not much nature around when I look outside of my window. And it's amazing to actually receive a video from the field and to get a little peek through your eyes at what you're doing and the surrounding and the animals and the sounds and the nature around you. It gives me way more feeling of what is happening on the ground. So a quick video can say more than 1,000 words and can really engage your donor. You don't have to also make it fancy or edit too much. It's about giving a little bit of a raw feeling, connect to that field work. If a video is too complicated, photos do the trick as well, or a nice, passionate email saying, we made that one tracker green, we made that one milestone. It's really nice to be engaged, not just in the reports, but also around. A second advice that I would give you is to check with your donor if you're allowed to recycle reports. I often encourage the projects that we support with Conservation Connect to do so, especially if we co-fund a project with another donor. We do have reporting forms, but I don't like people to waste their time to make a second report that they've already written to another donor just to make it, to put it in our format, let's say. So we also allow organizations to recycle the reports and to send us the report that they've written to another donor, because it gives us the same information. Now, I don't want to go too much into detail on the topic of AI, as we can say a lot about this, but I do want to mention it quickly because it is an obvious time win and we see it a lot these days. My advice would be to use, but don't overuse AI, as it can save time. But what the donor really wants is a real story, and AI can take the soul out of a story. So I would say you do use AI to summarize a text in a limited amount of words if you need to, or use it to check your language. But don't let it write your report for you, because we do want that real story and that passion behind it, especially. Which brings me to the third point, is tell your story. Your story is so important to us as a donor to engage us in your project and get that buy-in, but also to the rest of the world, to be honest. In general, there is enough bad stuff happening in the world. We all need a little bit of positivity. Stories of hope from the field can do so much, and you should also not underestimate how much your experience and your positive stories, or your stories of your projects that you've done in the field, can inspire other conservationists. So I think a lot of conservationists are there, they're working on their own species and in their own bubble, often a little bit isolated in the field. And they also feel sometimes like it's me against the world. But then hearing stories from other conservationists can be truly inspiring and very supporting to them as well. So share your stories with on your socials, but also with your donors. Your donors might even be able to help you with making your story gain more visibility. Maybe they put something on their socials or on their website that might drive more visibility to your project, and again give your work a little bit more exposure. Next to telling your story, also share your findings, because this is also super important. So with local media and events, even at schools, perhaps you may create that buy-in with local authorities, with local communities. Also update your website or your Conservation Connect profile with your milestones so far, or the work that you've done. And you might even want to publish in a scientific magazine. So scientific publications are also very important. I want to steer some attention to the website Conservation Evidence hereby as well. You can find it just by Googling conservation evidence, or I think it's conservationevidence.com, which is an online and open source journal that is free to publish in. I have a print screen on the next slide. Here you see the topics ordered by species, but they also have it by biomes and by type of interventions. It's free to publish in. They publish any results from research and projects that test the effectiveness of conservation actions. And it is a great resource to look for information when building your application, but also when you look at divulging your results. The fourth advice I have is to connect with other conservationists. I would say don't reinvent the wheel. That's a no-brainer, but also, yeah, that's a bit of a waste of energy in that sense. So check in with others to see what's going on around you. If there is some competition in your area, or you don't feel comfortable with sharing to everyone your approach in your project, it still doesn't hurt to look for other projects that are working on your species or on your methodology, and to learn from what they're doing. I think conservation evidence, again, is a very good resource to look at what works in conservation in terms of the type of interventions that other people did, and what circumstances this worked and in what circumstances this didn't work. So that's a really good source to look up interventions. And for people that are member of Conservation Connect, in there you can also look when you're logged in, you can search through the project database and look for specific species, or you can look on keywords and then see all the projects that are active within that with that keyword or that species, and you can connect with them and exchange as well. We see now that happening a few times, and sometimes there's really nice collaboration even coming out. This picture I didn't put on by accident. This is one photo that I really love a lot. It is from Fundación Ata Lopez that is working in Colombia on a small little frog, harlequin toad. This man is holding one in his hand. Oops. Yep. I did a little search on our database with the projects, and I saw we had 28 active projects on harlequin toads in South America. So this is just one of those things that illustrates how many, there's enough people to connect with, especially considering that there is often, with the harlequin toad, for example, most of the projects are dealing with similar or same threats, so you can really learn from each other. And last but not least, look for follow-on funding by building on previous work. So back to your theory of change, one grant should fall within a longer-term vision. I am aware of the fact that us as donors, we sometimes use the word project a little bit at random, that we say, just please describe your project in this application. But what we really mean is describe what you're going to do in this grant period, right? So then that is meant by project. Well, for some of you, project might be a way longer term. It's like, no, my project takes 20 years to see result. So I am aware that one grant period or one project actually falls within a longer term plan, and it should be. So it's really good to actually tell your donor as this and show how your story fits in the longer term plan. And when you write your next application, to build on the previous one, saying, making it a logical story on what is the next step. So make sure you use the results of your project so far to build your next applications on. It is super strong or at least I find it very strong for a donor. If a project comes to us saying, I did a successful pilot with this project already and see what came out, or I'm asking this grant to scale my efforts, look at what I have achieved so far. So at this, then it becomes a very logical story, and also it sounds very achievable and realistic. If your project is relatively new, or if you don't have that track record to build on, you can use other sources such as conservation evidence again, or other evidence on like scientific journals or other evidence online that you can find on similar work that has been done, to prove that, to build the case and make your project look feasible and logical. Finally, I want to mention that building a longer-term relationship with one donor is great. It is really a good thing if a donor commits to support you for multiple years, but you should always try to avoid donor dependency. So if you have a donor that commits for multiple years, also try to develop on the side some other income sources. It doesn't matter what you do it by, if you do it by volunteers or by some ecotourism or by building out your donor pool. But I can always encourage you to have multiple funding streams or multiple donors that you try to get funding from, so that when one donor stops or for some reason doesn't continue, your project doesn't have to go and stand still. So to summarize, my 5 advices for today was making sure you monitor the right things, following a theory of change, to keep your donors in the loop and engaged, to tell your story and share your results, to connect with other conservationists to share your learnings, and to build on your previous work when looking for follow-on funding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne. That was really great. And I just wanted to pull attention to one of the first things you said for everyone is that, celebrate those wins, even if they're small, because again, it really helps as you're going through your project and your longer term program to, keep that momentum and just enthusiasm going. I see we have one question in the chat, so we will address all questions in a moment, but so after Carla gives her presentation as well. So please go ahead, Carla.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen. Just a second. Okay. Is it all good? Can you see it? Perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for joining and welcome. We're very, very pleased to see lots of you joining from different parts of the world. And we hope this information is useful and you grab as much as you can and you get out there and apply it in your conservation work. So Anne just wonderfully presented about what happens after submission and after you successfully got a grant. But I'm going to be talking about this other side of applying for conservation grants, which is rejection. And I'll give you a short guide on what to do next and what to do with rejection from now on, to see it more as an opportunity rather than as something often negatively. But before doing that, I'd like to share with you who we are as CLP. And CLP, or the Conservation Leadership Program, it's a 40-year partnership between Fauna and Flora International, Fauna and Flora, BirdLife International, and Wildlife Conservation Society. And we provide grants for up to $15,000 US, and some other grant opportunities to early career conservationists in the Global South. So let's dive first of all into rejection. And here I would like to point out that it is really important that we think about rejection as something normal and as something useful. And this is because through rejection, we can learn so many things. And I think in pointing out this, it is really important that you learn that, or that you get into the mindset that, first of all, small conservation grants, are very, very competitive. And in fact, small grants are considered one of the most competitive funds worldwide, with less than 10% or 20% of them funded every year. Now, the second thing that you need to remember is that rejection is not a judgment on your mission. It's part of the learning process. So, and it's important that you remember that if that happens to you across your conservation career. And the third thing that is really, really important to remember is that many funded projects were rejected multiple times before success. And in fact, if you talk to every funded conservationist that you admire, you will learn that a lot of them have had a stock of rejections, and that has part of why they have become better as conservationists and when writing grants. So with that said, I want you to remember this, that rejection is part of the training and not a failure. And I like you to remember this the next time, if you apply for a grant and you get a rejection letter, look at this, print it and post it in front of you and have it always there as a reminder that it's part of your training and it's for you to become a better conservationist. Now, I'm going to give you 5 quick steps about what to do when you get rejected and that I hope you find useful. Now, the first step is to pause and then review. Often when you open your email and if you receive a rejection letter, it's really good that, yes, have to process this time, reflect, and make sure, you feel whatever you need to feel, but then also give yourself a day before you reread the decision. And this is because it's important to separate the emotion from the information. Make sure that, yes, you have the time to process how that makes you feel, because obviously as humans, we are not trained for rejection or for saying or getting no in our lives. But it's important to know that, it's part of your career development. And that once you have processed that, you can come back and see what happened with your proposal. So once you have come back to your proposal and reread it, look carefully into the comments, the scoring criteria, or the hints and language that you have received about fit or about priorities. And I mention this because a lot of the time, many people just see the word unsuccessful or not successful, and then you forget to read the rest of the letter. And in the letter or in the email, there's always very useful information that can help you. So remember, when you get these rejection letters or rejection email, this is not about you. It's about alignment of the proposal that you submitted with what the donor was asking for or was looking for. So that's also very important to remember. Now, after you have paused, you have processed, and you have reviewed your letter and what is said, then the next step is ask for feedback. And of course, many of the programs and the funders might give you feedback, but some of them might not. And this is just because they receive a lot of proposals every year, and it's just very hard to do that. If you receive the feedback, please carefully review it and make sure to read it. And if you have questions, you can ask back to your funder. But if feedback isn't provided, then ask them professionally and politely. I often see a lot of people that, they get your letter back saying that your application was not proposal, and then you come back and you just write this tiny letter saying, I was rejected, can you please tell me why? And the idea of being rejected is that also you learn how to continue building relationships with your funders. And yes, it might be that, they won't be able to give you feedback, again, because the workload could be very big for them to do that. But you can also ask people that have applied for the same fund, or those who have received and, yes, have also been rejected, but then they were successful. They will be able to provide you really, really good mentorship. And the most important thing to remember is that feedback is a free mentoring thing. It's a free mentoring thing that you can get from senior conservation professionals. And it's always really good to look at it as also part of the learning process. So I really encourage you to always seek feedback when or if you get a rejection letter, sorry. Now, after you have done this, the third thing is to diagnose the real issue. What happened with my proposal that didn't make it successful this time? Well, one of the things that you have to take into account is that many or the majority of the proposals are not selected due to 2 reasons. The first one is that obviously as funders, we only have a certain amount of funding that we can allocate for proposals. But the other one is that proposals, most of them are not selected or not even shortlisted due to fixable reasons. And this is where you have to pay a lot of attention. And Anne already point out in some of the things that I'm going to mention here, but one of them is, well, first is look at why your project didn't match the funders, either because of priorities or geography. And make sure that, when you are reading the application, you read the guidelines, because in the guidelines will tell you there's a lot of treasures hidden there that could help your proposal to be successful or not. So please read the guidelines and make sure that you understand all what is required from the funder. If it's not clear, often there's always like an opportunity for you to ask questions or to email them to make sure that your project fits in it. Now, the second thing is like clarity. We often see that there's amazing ideas out there, but when you read throughout the proposal, the methods are unclear or the outcomes are not well developed. So this is where, like I was saying, and recommendations on like make sure that you have a good theory of change is clear. So I would recommend that always look into reviewing your theory of change when you are preparing an application. Now, the third thing is about the scale. Look at the scale of your project. Was it too ambitious or was it too small? Often we see like these amazing projects that are full of so many ideas, but when it comes to like review your activities or your goals or the scope of your proposal, it does look at it's very ambitious for the timeline of the grant. So please always make sure to review that and make all the adjustments that are needed so that you can realistically say, oh, yes, I will be able to accomplish it, or no, it is too ambitious, so I need to change certain activities or reduce the methods that I need to use. So look at these tiny bits that could be and will be probably pointed out in your feedback, but if not, then just look at it and make a good in-depth reflection of those. And then also evidence. Some of the times, again, the proposal is really good, but there's not enough data, or the proof, the approach doesn't really matches, or there's something there that do not align. And the thing is that all these things should be aligning between each other. And what we see often is that there's a lot of disconnection in between the conservation problem, and then with the methods, then with the scale or the scope, and then the evidence do not support enough what you're trying to do. So make sure that you always revisit this once you have reviewed the full application again. Now, the step 4 is like really important. The idea is that you strengthen your application and not just to scrap it all, because obviously there is a reason why you're developing this project, and there might be some things that just need to be strengthened, and not necessarily to just get rid of that. And it happens a lot that people think that because one proposal was rejected, then that idea is not good anymore, or that project is not good anymore. So that's not necessarily true. And that's why step 4 is always to tighten your core story. You have reviewed in previous step what happened, what was the real issue. Well, then come back and put those pieces together again and tighten that story. First of all, make sure that you're clarifying the conservation problem. This is often something that tends to happen, is that the problem, just the conservation problem, was not clear enough. And although the rest of the things could be very good when developing them, the problem on itself was not clear and substantially clear for the donor to decide if the proposal was good for funding. Now, you need to ask, why is the funding needed right now? Is it really urgent right now for you to have this money, and why? Or is there other things that you could be doing if you don't get this funding? What could happen? Could you be maybe doing some other activities that not necessarily require your project to have funding? Or what's the status of your project right now and why this funding is really needed? The other thing is like you need to sharpen your goals, methods, and measurable outcomes. Like I was saying previously, now you have an idea of what happened with your proposal, then go and sharpen those things that perhaps were not as good or they needed like a little bit of work, but make sure that you sharpen those. And the other thing is like simplify budgets. This is something we so often. Everything, it's wonderful. There's a clear conservation problem. You have good goals, good methods, and good measurable outcomes, but then the budget does not reflect that. And it's important that all these aspects, goals, methods, conservation problem, outcomes, and budget align to each other, because we take the time to review each of these. So it's very important that you take also the time to make sure that these align. I always like to reflect on like or to make people reflect about like what would happen if you were a donor. Look at your proposal, and if you think that this you as a donor would fund this, or if there's something missing, or if there, so just take the other way and set yourself as a donor and say like, yeah, this is definitely something that I would not fund, or maybe yes, there is something loose here and I really need to work. Take that mindset also, because it's a really helpful exercise for you when preparing your application, and especially after rejection. It's a really, really good tool for you to apply. Now, step 5 is reuse and resubmit strategically. But this is the word, strategically. Now that you have reviewed everything, that you know what happened with your application, that you have gone back and make sure to do like a good in-depth analysis of why your application was not successful, then take a look and put it all together, strengthening, and this might give you the opportunity to one proposal to actually become 2 or 3 tailor applications. And this is because often within the information that it's submitted or it's proposed, there's a lot of ideas that maybe could be developed into another proposal, but that still will help to support your work. So this is very important. If you're going to do that, just make sure that what you're resubmitting, it has been well thought, well planned, and well tailored, because tailored is the right thing here to think about. Adjust language and goals to match each funder's mission. Like you can see here right now, there's 8 funders in this webinar. And if you think about, or if you have read about all of us, you might see that we focus on different things. Yes, we are small conservation grant programs, but we have also different requirements. We focus on different things. So it's important that you read it. You read what every funder asks for and what's its mission, so that you can actually adjust these proposals that you're wanting to submit. We encourage you to visit the websites of each of the funders that are here, for example, to look and make an exercise and write what it's different between each of us, or it's similar, or if the geography, the scope, it aligns or not, and make sure that you gather all this information. This is very important because it's the next point is like track where you have applied and what feedback you have received. So maybe the application you submitted with one funder was not good because you realized that the eligibility criteria was not the right for your proposal, but it's good for another funder. So that will give you, the alternative of applying for another with another funder based on reviewing your one proposal that you already submitted. Another important point is to identify alternative small grants. And this is because obviously, like I said, it might not be right now that the funding you were thinking of can support your project, but there might be some others. And it's really important always to explore your options. Often as a funder, we always provide alternative grants within our websites so that you can also look at what's offered. Some of them are for technology, some of them are for specific equipment, but it's important, that you also take the time to look for alternative grants. Now, the final thing is you need to keep building your relationships and keep doing the work. We funders love momentum. So while applying for one grant or another, it's important that you also, within your scope and scale, continue to develop your work. And for this, you don't necessarily have to use funding. You can do it in other ways, like for example, maybe doing some outreach, or maybe reaching out to donors when you know they're going to be in an event. We really enjoy talking to future applicants, when there's events and there's someone there and it's like, come, can you see my poster? Or like, hey, I'm going to have a presentation. It's like, here, will you like to come and join? We really enjoy that because that means that you're really interested in like building relationships with us outside of the grant scope, and that can give you a lot of future opportunities also for your application, because obviously we know that your project, because we saw it once in your presentation, or because we have seen that your project has been growing action, right? In action. So we call that proof of action. So please make sure to remember that and build relationships. And remember, with all this together, you're building a proposal portfolio. It's not just a single shot. It's important that you have this as part of your conservation work, because you're going to be needing the submitting applications to keep supporting your work. So just make sure to consider that. And then just some final takeaways is that I like to see rejection as career capital. And I think it's, I will really invite and encourage all of you who are out there in search of funding. It's that rejection, it's part of our career capital. And that every rejection improves your grant writing skills. That persistent plus learning can definitely lead to a higher funding success. Remember that a rejected grant is not a stop sign, but an opportunity to shift the course. And also that conservation careers are built over time. This is step one, not the end. And finally, a very important reminder for all of you that that has helped to many of our applicants and to many conservationists out there is that rejection, it's common, it's survival, and it's useful. So I hope with this information, you kind of like see rejection in a different way, and that knowing that this is also part of your learning. So with that, yeah, thank you so much. And yeah.
Thank you, Carla. And I think one thing to remember from both Anne and Carla is, looking at things quite positively really does help, because Carla mentioned this before, everyone gets rejected. It's not an if, it's a when it's going to happen. No one has gone through their conservation careers and never had a rejection. So it is what Carla was saying, take those steps to learn from it and treat it as that learning experience, even though we know sometimes that's very hard and frustrating. So we do have quite a few of good questions that have come through the chat. So I will kind of just go through some of those now, but Anne, this one might be a good one for you to respond to. But so there was a question asked early on around what happens if, say, a current funder that you have might change their focus or their strategies. The context here was that they're seeing that a lot of times or recently, trustees might be shifting their interests to kind of safer bets that might not be what they're currently doing. But do you have any advice for how you might be able to work with that or work with that donor if those shifts happen?
Yes, I understand the question, and I might also imagine that it can be quite frustrating that you're building your project and then the donor goes a different route. But I think the key here is to build that relationship with your donor. So what I said, like to engage your donor, but also in a way that it turns out to be a dialogue. Because it's already one really good observation. So that I think it was Youth for Nature that posed this question. They actually have paid attention to which direction their donor is moving to, which is one already key thing. If you notice that your donor is moving one side, then you can actually have that dialogue like, oh, hey, I see that, like how do we combine it, or you can discuss it, because I feel like if you have a longer standing relationship with a donor already, even if they go to safer options, the fact that you are having a longer term relationship with them might make that you actually do feel like a safe option, because there might be risks in your project, but you have already an established relationship, or you might have already built trust with that donor. I think that actually is a very key component, the trust that you're building. Um, if you're really going different ways, then you do have to look for other donors. But if there is just a slight movement, you might also want to keep that dialogue going to see if maybe the donor wants to support other parts of your organization, like of your activities. Maybe you have some program parts that are less risky or that feel more solid to the donor. So maybe you can shift around like that. But yeah, I think it all starts with opening the dialogue.
Thank you. Another question that we had, and Carla, I think you might want to help address this. It came up during your presentation. So Salima mentioned, that of course, clarity and, clarity is very important, and you might have unclear methods or outcomes, but sometimes this can happen if there is a language barrier. And this is also for everyone online. This is something that also came up in some of the questions that were submitted. But Carla, if you want to touch on that, or if anyone else wants to do that, because what came up online was how are funders considering this in their review of applications?
That is true, and that is something that also as funder we recognize it's a barrier, and that we are trying, and we have been obviously discussing about how can we address this barrier. And myself, as a person who is a non-English speaker, I know for directly what does this mean and how does that affect. So I think it's very important also that when you're preparing your application, you can always seek for advice from your funders, because sometimes they could give you, some tips and recommendations on, like, okay, I have this person that, applied for a grant, and that might be able to help you, or they can give you like advice on which tools you can use. I know that Anne touched a little bit on AI, and with language barriers, this is something that we have seen that have helped applicants because we understand it's a barrier, and it's a big barrier. So this is where, for example, we see the benefit of perhaps using AI just to make sure that what you're trying to propose it aligns with the language in which the application needs to be submitted. But also sometimes within the programs, there's also people like myself, for example, Spanish speaker, that whenever you have questions, you can always, come to us, and I try to address them also in the case of Spanish and sometimes in French, but not as many. But yeah, there's so many things. So I think we want to acknowledge that continues to be a barrier, and that as funders, we know that that is something to look into, and that we are also working together to see how can we definitely overcome that barrier for you as future applicants. I hope with that I can cover. But if not, I would really love Simon, Nicholas, Lisa, or Emily, or Anne, if there's anything else you would like to add about that, because I think it's something that we all as funders are acknowledge and are aware of.
I can probably add very quickly, yes, that we're aware most of the people who apply to our for funding from Rufford are not English speakers. So I agree with the certainly the use of AI. Another thing you can do is if you're struggling, but if you the referees you choose is quite useful as well, if they can comment on your own capabilities. So that gives a bit of extra backup if you're finding it difficult to express what exactly you want to achieve because of the language difficulties, but maybe you have somebody who can perhaps express in a better way the importance of the work that you're doing. We've translated some of our FAQs into different languages to try and help. We're still at the stage where we have to consider only applications only in English. That may change in the future with the tools available, but so we're doing what we can.
Thank you both. I want to open up to anyone who might want to touch on this, but there's a question around how we view qualitative conservation social science projects and not only just the quantitative ones. But Nicholas or Lisa or Emily?
If I may, in that vein, I think the kind of information and data we get from these projects that are implemented is so incredibly varied that it makes it useful in a lot of different ways. And I'd like to maybe briefly go back to a point that Anne brought up relating to video reporting and things like this, which I think really can make a huge difference for funders and donors and really give a good indication of the atmosphere as well, let's say, of where the project has taken place. I think a lot of donors grapple a little bit or struggle a little bit with the need for data and the need also with data in a variety of different contexts and how that can be useful both for the donor in terms of assessing impact, but also contributions to other conservation initiatives. And so I think the sort of discussion of qualitative and quantitative data from projects is, I'd say, unresolved at best, and we probably need both as donors, but I'd say it also depends on the project itself. Some projects are far more social science based and based around often behavior change and threat reduction by changing the behavior of local communities. And obviously you can extract quantitative data from that relating to, let's say, hunting and poaching. But on the other hand, a lot of community work is far more qualitative. And so I'd say in terms of, yes, information that comes to donors to reflect how well a project was implemented or what was done in a project, often it's a little bit of both. I think the onus is somewhat on us donors to be flexible and to some degree to take what we can get and to make the best of the information we get.
That's great. Thank you.
I'd just like to add that I think when we read proposals, it's based on the strength of the kind of evidence behind it. And if you have a strong social science team behind you who's doing the evaluation and setting up these projects, then I think that that's viewed very favorably from a funding perspective. But the same can be said for pure science projects in that it still needs to have the evidence behind it. And so when we see social science in projects, it's how we view it is very much dependent on the strength of the team behind it and the confidence we have that will be done in a way that will get an impact.
That's great. Thank you. And thanks to those of you in the chat who have also been helping each other with good suggestions. Someone had asked for a list of other donors. There's been a few that have been responded there. Joshua, thank you. You've just, added in a new additional resource that could be very helpful. And since we're coming up on time, I think there's not too many more questions in the chat. And so I do want to end on this last one because I think it will go in the same vein of a bit of positivity in this. But so the request from Angela, but what can you say to a graduate student who has applied to many small grants and has been unsuccessful? Carla, do you want to go ahead and start us off with that one?
Yeah, of course. I actually was replying on that, but I think if you haven't, it would be great. It would be great to ask for feedback. If it's possible to get that feedback, then that will probably give you an idea of what has happened to with your application. It might be there's a key pattern often there that maybe you have not really seen, or maybe because of the different funders you have applied, maybe you have tried to follow the same outline, while maybe what it needs is you need to reshift that outline and kind of like draft it for the donor you're trying to apply. Because like we said, like here, there are 8 different donors that could be looking for, different aspects when trying to support your work. But also, I would say, do not give up. As someone that went to graduate school and was trying to apply for funding, I know that, it can be a challenge, especially right now, with a lot of things happening around the world and with like funding being even more competitive, that is expected. But what I would say is like, rather than seeing it like as an unsuccessful thing, seeing it as an opportunity. You are improving your grant writing, and that's really important, because at the end, if you want to pursue a job in academia, I know that grant and writing skills are a requirement, right? So see it as like, you're developing other skills, other wonderful skills that might be needed in the future for your career. And if I would count the many times that I was rejected, I was like, there were many out there. And I really enjoyed that. As part of the process, I also make a list of the skills that I was gaining while being rejected, and that actually helped me a lot for building also my CV. It's like, I started working on outreach, and I started working on public speaking, and I started working, on different other skills that also helped me in the future as part of my career, right? So I will encourage you to, see it as an opportunity of also growing as a conservationist and as part of your career development.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, just don't get too despondent. I mean, it does happen, as everybody has said. The conservation funding climate at the moment is very, very difficult. There's some big funding bodies that have stopped supporting, so obviously a lot more people are applying to us as small funders, for example, and we have very limited resources, most of us. So the pressure is very high. And I suppose it depends. I don't know whether it's one person applying to the same organization 8 times, or whether it's different organizations they're applying to. So obviously I can't comment specifically on that, but maybe also speak with people who perhaps have a bit more experience in writing applications to perhaps read through your proposals. Is there something obvious that maybe they can say, look, I can see there's something here that you need to perhaps think about working on a bit more. Use any contacts you've got. If you've got supervisors or other people with perhaps a little bit more experience within that field who might be able to suggest things that you can do. But don't be despondent. It can sometimes take a long time to get that first funding application. Once you have it, then you have the opportunity, like Anne says, of building a relationship with a donor, which is the key to long-term success once you get that grant.
I was just going to add as well, sometimes there isn't anything wrong with your application. As we've all mentioned, it is incredibly competitive to get these small grants. And so it might be that it's just unlucky that this time around you didn't get the funding. So obviously it's worth reviewing your application, checking you match the criteria for the funder that you've applied for. But I know from our point of view, we get far too many amazing applications than we can fund. So it is just sometimes chance. So keep going, keep applying, keep your chin up. You will get funding for a good project. I just wanted to put that out there. Sometimes there isn't anything wrong with your project. It is just a question of limited funds from the funder.
It's so true. I actually put on like a little mantra this sentence that Carla wrote: persistence plus learning is higher funding success. I think that really pretty much nails it. It's a really nice sentence to keep in mind.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for all of that positivity. And thank you for all of you who joined us today. We are really pleased. And what Anne and Carlos said, engaging and talking with donors is really important. And we all want to hear, amazing stories from the people that we fund, or all the amazing things that what people are doing. So please definitely keep that in mind and as you go forward. But with that, we are out of time. So again, thank you, everyone, and keep an eye out if we will hopefully be doing more of these later in the year.